Welcome to Perspectives with Wenchi Yu, where we discuss Trump 2.0's policies and politics and their implications for Asia, China, Taiwan, and beyond. The world has been on a roller coaster since Trump's April 2nd Liberation Day announcement of tariffs. As of this recording on April 12th, most tariffs have been suspended for 90 days following volatile global stock markets and the dumping of U.S. bonds. Currently, only the 10% baseline tariff and the 145% tariff on China remain. In response, China has retaliated with 125% tariffs. The U.S. and China are now engaged in a full-on trade war, with neither side appearing willing to initiate talks. Chinese media and social media clearly convey China's determination to fight to the end, while President Trump and his team have repeatedly stated their desire for Xi Jinping to make the first call. The renewed trade war between the world's two largest economies will have global repercussions. To understand the impact of these historically high tariffs on import and export businesses, we speak with Yao Zhao, founder of 50 Hertz Tingly Foods, a business that incorporates the tingly sensation of Sichuan pepper into food and drinks. Welcome, Yao. Thanks for joining us. Of course, these days, tariffs is big news, and you have a peanuts import business. Tell us if that's affecting you and your business.
Thanks so much, Wenchi, for having me. I've been listening to your podcast. It's been very insightful. So thanks for having me. I do import peanuts, but it's actually more than that, as you know. So I'm the founder of a company called 50 Hertz Tingly Foods. We focus on one special ingredient called the Sichuan pepper, right? So peanuts is one of our most popular products. We make tingly Sichuan pepper peanuts, but we also import Sichuan peppers, red and green Sichuan peppers, or Hua Jiao in Chinese, and also Sichuan pepper oil, and among other things.
And Sichuan pepper is, for the listeners who don't know, it's this special taste that makes your palate.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of your listeners are China hands, and being in China, love Chinese food. It is essential ingredients for Sichuan food. Hua Jiao, right? It's the tingly numbing spice, the classic mala combo. Yeah.
And the reason why you founded this business, how many years ago?
About 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah,
wow,
I know.
Oh my God.
Time flies.
Why? What made you decide to found this business?
I think it's a very unique spice. It's indigenous to China. Many people think of Sichuan food being hot, spicy, but it's really the chili peppers, right? The chili pepper is actually a Colombian exchange product. It was imported in China 400 years ago.
So it didn't start in China.
The chili peppers is not starting from China, right? But Hua Jiao is indigenous to China. Only China has Hua Jiao, or only that part of China produces Hua Jiao. Yeah.
Okay. So why did you start?
So because I think it's a very unique sensation, a very unique spice. It's indigenous to China, and no other spice can give you that tingly, numbing sensation. Right. And on top of that, it's super aromatic, super floral. It's just amazing. It
smells
spice.
Really good.
Yeah, it smells amazing. So I think it has the potential to become the new wasabi. If you think about it, 40 years ago, if you tell an average Americans or anyone in the world outside of Japan, you say, wasabi, people have no idea what wasabi was. But because Japanese food in the past 40 years has become prevalent, has become a household name, right? So wasabi also become a household name. That kick becomes very familiar to a lot of people. But now with Sichuan food and Chinese food become very trendy, this unfamiliar spice, I think it can actually claim a spot in the culinary world. Yeah.
Especially for the younger generation, and if you want to make Chinese food more fancier, kind of the modern way of looking at Chinese food, I feel like the Sichuan pepper taste is required.
Right. So, I think the reason why for me to start it is because one, it's very unique and nobody's doing anything about it. And I'm from Sichuan. It's my hometown spice. So I want to do something about it. I want to be the Sichuan pepper guy to inject some energies behind it.
Do you have some background doing import business? And
So short answer is no, right? So my background is actually in clean energy development, international organizations, World Bank, economics. I started it because my family, I'm from Chongqing. Chongqing is this big city in China, in southwest China. My family has an import-export business. So I started it with some help from them. But really, it's just me going into the field, going to meet some farmers and convincing them to sell the peppers to me. And I exported from China to the US. That's how I got started.
So when you started 5 years ago, what was it like to get the pepper imported into the US?
Right, it was very hard actually because when I started it, it was during Trump's first term. That was 2019, 2020. So at the end of Trump's first term. So if you remember the first trade war, he added a lot of tariffs on Chinese products. But back then, it was not really a blanket tariff like now, like basically universal. Every Chinese thing is 34% or 170%. Back then, it was actually product specific, right? So back then, peppers has a 9% tariff, or my oils and any sauces has about 13%, and peanuts has a 25%, which is very high. But
that was towards the end of that was already 25% on.
That was already 25%, and also at the time it was COVID, right? I started business really during COVID, so import export was very complicated. Yeah.
And during Biden years, the tariffs stayed,
yeah.
Right. And did you expect there's going to be a second Trump administration and then second tariffs would go up again?
Yeah. So, I mean, because I started during COVID and already there's tariff, so my retail price, my cost already priced in that tariff. I didn't expect Biden would lower the tariff, so everything just went on. And then Trump, during his election campaign, he threatened high tariff, like I think up to 60%. And yeah, we did a bunch of preparations.
What kind of preparations went into this?
I think one is, like many businesses, we stocked up, right? We imported heavily on some products.
So you have storage?
We have some storage, yeah.
In the US?
In the US, yeah. So we imported and then we managed to get the products in before the inauguration.
But how much longer can it last?
Yeah, I mean, we stocked up those that has longer shelf life. We know, okay, it can last maybe a year or a year and a half. And we know, we have clients. So we stocked up some. But these measures are very short term, right? You cannot really stock up for the next 4 years.
Well, because yeah, it's.
I mean, it's cash flow, right? We're a small business. You just don't have enough cash flow to stock up. So it's impossible to really stock up. So that's one preparation we did. And then the other preparation we did was we started calculating, right? Like, okay, what if tariff goes up to 30%, 40%, 50%, or actually at the time, our worst case scenario was 60% because that's what he threatened. But here we are now.
So tell us how you feel about the last week, right?
It came as a shock. I think I had some initial panic because we do have a shipment that just left, literally on Liberation Day, left Shanghai to the LA port.
And what's happening to that ship?
It's on the way, and then we just keep watching the tariff go up and up, and then when it hits the port, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, then we have to pay the tariff, and that's a lot of money.
Walk us through, how does that work? So when the ship arrives at the port in America, you have to first pay tariffs in order to receive the order.
Yes. Well, so I don't want to go into the weeds, but let's say 100% tariff, right? It's actually added on your FOB price. FOB is an international trade term. It means freight on board. Basically, it's added on the price at Shanghai.
Why Shanghai?
Because your cost up until Shanghai is called freight on board. That's
You mean the origin of
right.
where?
The price before the products get onto the boat. That's your FOB price. So the tariff is tariffing that price. If your cost is $1, whatever product you're selling, it's $1. When it gets on the boat in Shanghai, and then Trump is adding 100% tariff on that product, and then on top of that, you have to pay shipping, you have to pay domestic trucking, right? But the tariff is just the FOB price, not on shipping, not on anything else.
So the actual price that you're selling to the consumers obviously will be based on all the additional costs.
Correct. So what I'm trying to say is, let's say if the tariff is 100%, you are not looking at the end price to go up 100%, because only part of your COGS is subject to 100% increase, whereas some other cost may be much bigger. So it depends, right? So if you are selling, for example, maybe iPhone, I would say probably the actual cost of the product is very high. Then the tariff is going to be very expensive because of the original price. And then, because Apple, they probably ship containers after containers of iPhone to the US, so the shipping cost is not that high, right? So for Apple, an iPhone's price increase is much higher than probably my products, because so it really depends on your cost structure.
You have several products. You have the peppercorns, peanuts, the oil, and other things. So let's just focus on the three. Based on what you just said, how much would it go up, like in terms of percentage?
Yeah, so in terms of preparation, right? When Trump got inaugurated, he added 10 plus 10, so 20% on our products. And then we immediately did a calculation. And at the time, 20% tariff on new tariff on top of the original ones, we did a calculation. The retail, if we pass the tariff directly to US consumers, the retail price would go up 5 to 10%. Depends on which product. So that's the ratio we're looking at back then. But now we didn't even bother to actually do the calculation because it's just nonsensical.
It's also changing
by hour.
Yeah.
It's by hour. Yeah.
So waiting for the final, or who knows if there's going to be a final rate?
Right. So I think the immediate cost or immediate impact for many business, who has a shipment actually on the way to the US, the most immediate impact is you have to pay the tariff in
because
weeks.
it's coming.
It's coming. You have to have cash to pay this. You can either reject the shipments, like, hey, I don't want the shipment anymore, right? So okay, and then you have to cover the freight, Or if you actually want the product and keep selling, right? Don't disrupt your supply chain or your inventory. Then you actually have to pay the tariff, and that's a lot of cash, right? Because we budget, say, 20% of the cost to pay the tariff, but now it's 100%. All of a sudden, you need 5 times the cash, and for a lot of business, you just don't have that. You can't afford it. Just cannot afford it. So one way is we're really trying to, as I said, we stocked up previously, right? We said, okay, we're gonna call the stock day by day, right? But now we need cash, so we're doing sales. We're talking to our suppliers, saying, hey, can you take products now? We can give you some discounts. If you take now, the price is the same, right? Because it's pre-tariff products, pre-tariff inventory. So we're doing a lot of that.
So having cash is more important now.
I think so. Oh yeah.
Will you consider borrowing money from the banks?
Yeah, we actually haven't done any credit lines. I think borrowing money is certainly a possibility, but then you have to calculate, okay, and then you're also adding, the cost,
of course,
right?
Interest
rate, interest is high, as you know right now.
Any other options? Can you potentially find an alternative market? The U.S. is your largest market.
U.S. is our largest market. Is almost our only
market,
because it's a good market.
Yeah.
It's a really amazing market, actually. Yeah. I think I know I've heard some people suggesting, oh, maybe you can divert your products to Canada or Mexico. To be honest, I haven't really explored that. I don't know how possible it is.
Yeah, I don't know if that's really possible now. I mean, it seems like Trump is cracking down on a lot of this, diversion.
Yeah. And everything is pretty expensive too. Imagine if you divert it to Vancouver and then you have to hire a truck to drive it down into the US. It's not that easy. Yeah.
Yeah. But what about your supply chain partner? Can you work out some kind of deal to help you reduce the cost?
So when the tariff first went up 10 plus 10 to 20%, we calculate the cost. I said, well, the cost can go up 5 to 10%, and I said, okay, maybe we can absorb that increase internally. One is we talk to our trading partners, we talk to our suppliers, and they were super supportive. They said, oh, yeah, we can work with you to absorb this.
Is it based on the volume?
Right, and there are many things, right? So maybe you can buy more, and then we can give you some discount, or we can give you a longer payment term, so you have more cash. So there are just various ways you can absorb a certain amount, and then liberation day comes, it becomes like 34%, and then later, went sort of insane, and then it's just no way. And then I think also our suppliers got very dismayed for 5 years. They've been so supportive because what we're doing is aligned with their mission, right? So our suppliers are the farmers, right? The local farmers. They have never thought Yao Jao, right? Sichuan pepper, this little spice could be celebrated by the Americans, by a lot of Americans, like mainstream Americans. I'm not talking about Chinese immigrants or Asian American or Asian immigrant community. It's really New York Times readers. They've never thought about it. And then for them, their life work, right? They've been harvesting and planting Sichuan pepper for their whole life. And now with this tariff, they're like, what are they doing? I think the trust is a bit broken. Not with me, but just with the US.
As a market.
As a market, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's happening everywhere. What are the other ways for you to mitigate in terms of price?
I was trying to wrap my head around how we should respond. I waited a week. So about 2 days ago, I sent out a note to our consumers where we do a lot of direct. So we do.
I think I'm on your email list. As well.
Yeah. So one that was just incredibly heartwarming. Because we communicated directly with our consumer, telling them what we're facing, right? For example, we told them our peanuts is facing 170% tariff, peppers is 154%, the oils like 159%, and then told them what's our mission and then how they can help us. Our customers really stepped up, and then the orders pouring in. So it really helped us on the cash front, because as I said, we have to pay this huge tariff. Otherwise, we're facing just out of stock for the foreseeable future. It was also very heartwarming. As I said, like we're building something that people actually cares, and then people are willing to vote with their money, with their cash, with their conscience, and then
clearly people still want your products. What are the other things like raw materials that you have to import from China? And is there any other alternative? For example, the US has peanuts as well. Are you considering that?
Well, so there's several layers. One is the other things we import is the packaging materials, right? Boxes and bags. China just does it better and cheaper. So that is also gonna, increase the price. You will
significantly,
not just our products, everywhere. Because everything is made in China. I mean, businesses.
Would you consider packaging here in the US?
Well, you can, but the material is still coming from China. Actually, at the beginning of my business, we imported our oils and peppers in bulk, and then we found a co-packer in the US. the cost is just too high, and then the supply chain is just too long. If we can get everything done at the manufacturer level, it's just a lot cheaper, and we can do a lot more.
What about now? With tariffs, is it still going to be cheaper?
And the other thing is maybe you can find the peanuts in the US. That's true, but what we are building is a flavor. It's just really hard to replicate that tingly Sichuan numbing flavor in the US. If I go to a Virginia peanut farms and then tell them that I'm making tingly numbing Sichuan peanuts, they probably wouldn't really understand what I'm really trying to do. And on top of that, and then we still have to import the raw ingredients to the US. And of course, I don't think you can actually plant Sichuan pepper Yao Jao in Shenandoah Valley. Or
you don't think it's possible?
I mean, you can grow a tree. I know some people grow Sichuan pepper trees in their backyard in Hudson Valley or Shenandoah or Seattle or San Francisco. I know quite a bunch of people, but not at a commercial level. Not at a commercial level. Yeah.
So not a viable option right now.
No.
What about new markets beyond the US?
That's unfortunately a reality as well, right? So one of the reasons why I want to insist in having the supply chain in China is because down the line, I want to introduce Huajiao numbing tingling sensation to many other markets, which will have requests from many other markets already. So that might have just expedited that whole process. We're looking at perhaps UK, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, because we have to pivot if US becomes a bit too inaccessible.
Well, obviously we're using your business as the microcosm to look at what could happen to the trade system. Have you heard from your peer businesses, is that happening on a similar pattern? So, for example, is China going to do more trade with other parts of the world? Is that what everyone is discussing and considering?
Oh, yeah. I think from what I know, for example, I mean, my trading partner in China, it's a trading company in Chongqing, and we have been doing import-export for 30 years. For all these years, US was not really a main trading partner. Now, even less so, because
what are the other regions?
Mainly Japan, Japan and Europe, because also Chongqing is the starting point of the railway train to Europe, to Rotterdam.
Right. Basically all the way through Central Asia.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can get products from Chongqing all the way to Rotterdam within a week and train. I think it's just gonna push China or many businesses to look at other markets. But there are trade-offs. The reason why US is so important, the market, not just because it's huge, but also because it's very profitable. I think Americans love shopping. It's a consumption-driven economy. And
Americans do spend money.
Yeah,
a lot of money.
Borrow money to spend money, right? As you know, right?
Right.
And then so I think
and on expensive items too.
We can go into this whole economic theory because I have an economic degree. Also, you're dealing with a lot of economists because U.S. dollars is the dominant world currency, and then that has brought a lot of benefit to the U.S. economy.
We're using your business to really talk about how it's affecting people. Let's look at the bigger picture. Well, you're an economist yourself. How do you see this going forward? I think that's the most fascinating part, is two largest economies are literally at war.
It's a big question. I think it's going to impact both economies in big ways. That's, I think, easy to see. Trump administration or the US wants to contain Chinese economy. I actually think it's going to do more good than damage to China, actually, this whole trade war. Because
do you think Trump was trying to contain China, or is it more about its own domestic reconfiguration of the economy?
I have no idea, because none of this makes any economic sense. But I think it's hard to contain China by design. And China always actually sort of have some kind of breakthrough out of necessity.
They'll figure it out.
Just figure it out.
We saw in that DeepSeek.
That's another case in point, right?
Right.
And China just make it cheaper, much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, if you actually lower tariff to Chinese products, just let China produce sneakers comfortably and then export it to the US. It might actually delay China moving up the value chain, right?
Because you're not cornering China.
Yeah, they're comfortable, right? I don't think people want to necessarily change the status quo when they're comfortable. But now there's a necessity. It's a survival for them to really fight back.
So it will hurt China.
Oh yeah, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
But I also think they have actually stocked up their war chest as well.
Yeah,
their arsenal.
They've been preparing for
years, right? I think it's gonna actually, in the long term, might do more good to China than damage.
In what way? What would be the good coming out of this
for China?
Yeah.
Oh, it will force them to really move up the value chain, to force China to really restructure their economy from an export-led economy to a consumption-led economy. In March, during the Lianghui, right, the two sessions, they have announced new incentive and subsidies for domestic consumptions, right? So I think it will really expedite that process to rethink, okay, what do we do now on a geopolitical level? The decoupling between the US and China will become more real, and then China will look at other partners more seriously. China will probably look at the EU in a new light, right? I
mean, it looks like the EU is looking at China too.
But then EU would say, would you support us on the Ukraine front?
Do you think China will be willing to do that?
I think so. In order to win over the EU, maybe China will change their stance on how the Russian-Ukraine war. So these are real impact just coming out of the trade war.
Yeah, that all requires very careful calculation. It's balancing economic interests as well as geopolitical and diplomatic, and on so many levels. So it sounds like it's not so straightforward either.
On the surface,
but he keeps saying he
wants to bring the manufacturing back.
Right.
But it's impossible. Maybe, but taxing or putting tariff on Sichuan pepper, my business, it's not going to bring Sichuan pepper to the US because, as I said, nobody wants to buy Sichuan pepper grown in Shenandoah Valley. You want to buy champagne from Champagne, right? You want to buy spice from their origin, the different parts of the world. That's just the nature of my business, right? So I just don't think a blanket tariff is going to make any sense.
Yeah.
And then from a US perspective, do they really want to making sneakers back to the US? US is not a manufacturing economy anymore. I'm sorry, but it's not. It's really service, which is high value. So I just don't think it's going to be back.
It will take some serious thinking beyond just tariffs as a policy, labor policy, how to structure American labor force. It's going to be really, really important, which I haven't seen him talk too much about it, but I think it's essential, right? Because we're talking about a lot of Americans out of jobs. Service type, I think it's different because that's the kind of people he probably considers they're not voting for him anymore. He wants to take care of those who have lost jobs and in the Rust Belt, etc. It's really valuable for us to hear from someone who's dealing with it right now, beyond policymakers and economists.
Yeah, it's. I think small business is the brunt of it.
For sure.
Yeah,
yes.
and anytime it's always the small
guys.
It's always
the small guys.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of economies too, the smaller economies get hit the most.
But I also have to say, I think if you're small like us, you're also lean. You're also you have lower, nimble, you have lower overhead costs, and then compared to actually bigger business, you probably have a higher margin. If you're really like Walmart or Costco, and then they're adding 150% tariff on your product when your margin, you have squeezed your supply chain to the bare bone, and then there's really no room for you to maneuver.
It attests to your business management skill.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, my business started during COVID. And so we have weathered a lot of storms.
That's the true entrepreneurship.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Yao.
Thanks for having me, Wenchi.
Yeah. As of April 13th, the U.S. announced exemptions for smartphones, computers, and other electronics from reciprocal tariffs, offering a reprieve to U.S. technology companies like Apple and NVIDIA. This raises questions about potential exemptions for other industries, such as apparel and furniture. The fluctuating tariff situation creates uncertainty for businesses, hindering their ability to plan for the future. While many remain hopeful for an eventual U.S.-China trade deal, long-term strategies to mitigate future disruptions are being considered. We're likely to see more turmoil before stability returns. This is Perspectives with Wenchi Yu, where we analyze the policies and political strategies of Trump 2.0 and their implications for Asia, China, Taiwan, and beyond. Thank you for watching and listening. We value your feedback. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast. See you next week.